It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week I'm joined by returning guest Samyukta Neeraj. She's already shared her DEI story with us before, and now she continues her story with her experience with advocacy and allyship. It's October 14th, 2024. Welcome to episode 258. Hey everybody, it's Monday, October 14th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips, and I'm also a CAE and an ACNP, and we are so glad you're here with us this week. Before we get into our topic, and welcome back returning guest Samyukta Neeraj, I want to say happy birthday to Pete Sapp, who is president of the National Taxpayers Union and also my husband. So happy birthday, Pete. So we would encourage everybody to follow or subscribe to Radio Free 501c if you haven't already. We know a lot of people out there listen or watch, and we really appreciate it. So please take a moment and subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service. And we also want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be. And as I mentioned, I'm really happy to be welcoming back Samyukta Neeraj. She was here with us before telling her DEI story. This week, she's back. She's here to talk with us about advocacy and allyship, and also tell us a little bit more about Dwarfism Awareness Month. But before we do that, Samyukta, welcome back. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, for sure. Glad to be back, Cecilia. Thank you so much for having me on and for having me share my story again on your fabulous podcast. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't remember me, I'm Samyukta Neeraj, MPHCAE. I live in the Chicagoland area. I have also been in the association space. I currently work at the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. It will be 5 years in December at my time there. So I love associations and I love DEI even more. So I'm really glad to be back and to share my story and provide some perspective.
Oh, that's great. And I remember when we were talking after the first episode and we were having a conversation about what we talked about, and this topic came up, and I said, "Hey, you've got to come back." So you're here. So that's wonderful. I'm with you. I'm a big supporter of DEI. I think it's really important because it opens up our minds to other people's experiences and it helps us with our understanding. So I think a lot of people, and you touched on this the first time you were on the show, they don't really understand dwarfism and what it actually means and whether or not it's a disability. So, could you talk about that for a few minutes?
Yes. So I have dwarfism, which is a physical disability that results in short stature, adult short stature. So the heights vary anywhere from 2 feet 8 inches to 4 feet 8 inches. But the medical dictionary classifies dwarfism as anyone who has adult short stature of 5 feet or less. But so the heights will definitely vary. I'm exactly 3'9" and 3/4. So every quarter of an inch matters when it comes to having dwarfism. Um, it is a genetic condition, so it comes in different types, disproportionate and proportionate. The type that I have is achondroplasia, which is the most common type of dwarfism. It occurs in, I don't have the exact, it's a rare condition, but I don't have the exact statistics, but it's in one in every 4,000 births in the US. So it's a pretty rare condition, but not too rare. So everyone must have seen a little person at some point in their life. Achondroplasia literally translates to no lack of cartilage.
Mhm.
So that means my body does not produce enough cartilage that converts to bone. So that's why you see the short stature because of the delayed bone growth and development. So that's dwarfism in a nutshell. There's over so many different types and it affects all of us differently. So just another person with achondroplasia will still experience it differently than I do because we have all different body types, different body shapes, sizes, skin tones, personalities. So dwarfism doesn't show the same up. It doesn't show up the same in two people.
That's really interesting. Not to minimize dwarfism, but I think we see that a lot with any kind of condition, whether it's a disease or a chronic condition or just the way you're born, because we're all different and our bodies are all going to be unique and we're all going to be different. So that totally makes sense to me that there would be so many variations of dwarfism. So you had mentioned that advocacy and allyship were really important for you as you grew from, as a child and as you matured into adulthood, because you said it gave you a lot of confidence. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I wouldn't be here to this day, like this successful, just like at this place in my life without my advocates. My mom, especially, is my number one advocate since the day I was born. So in India, so I was born in India and I emigrated here when I was a year and a half. And my mom and I emigrated here together. So just that journey for my mom personally, just leaving a country that been born and grown up in and known a whole culture, a whole different society to assimilate in something brand new, not knowing what the future would hold. And also with me, like
Mhm.
not just being her child, but being a child with dwarfism. What is the future going to hold for me? And so much uncertainty and what resources are available so that I can live a productive, quality, successful life. So ever since day one, she was always the one making sure that I had everything I need, making sure that I had the resources, the support in place, the accommodations, whether it's just the clothing, making sure that I was accepted, making sure that I was seen, especially now in the US, educating the teachers in school, the principal, just the different staff, making sure that I had step stools in my classrooms, making sure that I got on the bus. Like I actually participated a lot in what they call the special education, even though I wasn't in the classes, but I used the resources. Like I was in the regular classes. I was also in honors classes when I was in high school. So the system is like I could go into so many details about just the system, the school system, and how it has been very segregated over time, especially like for people with disabilities, and how I always talk about assimilate, why do you have to segregate? So, but those resources were available to me and just educating the world, and and educating the world, raising awareness, and also advocating for what I need. There are times when, whether it's my sisters, my family, or my mom, and my friends, just asking for what I needed, I I needed my friends there to speak up for me because, or even just educating, just opening my mouth or just saying something, people wouldn't take me seriously. So I needed sometimes that extra boost or extra lift from whoever it was so I could be heard, so I could be seen. And I remember in school, I had, excuse me, in elementary school especially, there were like a few, three or four friends that I would call my bodyguards. And they would, whenever the little kids, I was in fifth grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and whenever the little kids would make fun of me, my friends were there to step in for me. And they would say, "Hey, stop it. Like, leave her alone." They were the ones speaking up for me because if I did, it wasn't enough.
Mhm.
So they needed to hear from some average sized body
Right.
or to listen and to stop. So it was always something that happened. Like it's necessary. Advocacy and allyship is necessary for this work, for any change to take place, or any systemic things to be put into place. We need allies and advocates because, to be honest, like they don't like nothing changes unless we have all voices.
That's right. No, I agree 100%. I try to do my part and advocate. I recently, I'm currently, as you know, dealing with a short-term disability, and so I've had some of those experiences. Somebody I know who has a long-term disability wrote me an email the other day and said, "Well, imagine if you had to go through all these experiences I've been through. Well, I don't have to imagine it anymore because I've had some of that experience. I
Mm-hmm.
used to imagine it. I used to look at people that had different needs than I did or needed different accommodations I did and wonder what it was like. And no, it's difficult. It's hard sometimes to get what you need when you need it, which is the definition of relevance. So hotels, transportation companies, out there, convention centers, if you want to be relevant, think about what people need and when they need it. So some of the things I've seen are poorly designed, reasonable accommodation, which is reasonable accommodation. It's what your business can do to help a person, like my hair salon. Great people love them. But when I was still using a wheelchair, they don't have a ramp
Oh,
because it's an older building. So we had to
yeah.
have our own ramp from home so I could get into
Oh,
the salon. And I just said, you could just buy one at Amazon. They're really not that expensive. And then you just put it out when someone needs it. Some of these things are very easy and we should point them out. It's uncomfortable for everybody to point it out. It's because it's another issue, Samyukta. I'm sure you've seen that too in the world. Some people just they're afraid to speak up even if they know it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to advocate for people. It's the right thing to do to show allyship when someone needs support. So when you were in those situations and your friends would stand up for you, which is awesome, wonderful that they would do
mhm.
that for you. Do you feel it was your height? Do you feel it was because you were a girl at that time because you were a child, or do you feel it was just because you were different?
It's because I was different.
Mm-hmm.
So dwarfism it's not just a height issue. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like I'm not just short. Like I
Mm-hmm.
look different too. So I mentioned that I have a disproportionate type of dwarfism.
Mm-hmm.
So achondroplasia is not it doesn't it results in more than just like shorter stature. We have a curved spine,
Oh.
our legs are short, our legs are shorter, our arms are shorter. I have trident shaped fingers. Um, but our torso is average sized.
Mm-hmm.
So my hips, like my torso, it's all average size. So I wear like average like women's bras, and my shirt size is a women's extra small. I just maybe have to short fold up the sleeves
Mm-hmm.
because my arms are longer and my head is also larger too. The circumference is bigger, so I look visibly different.
Mm-hmm.
And and so I would get name called, I would get stared, I would get pointed at, like a lot of stares and things like that. So and kids can be cruel. They don't have a filter, and there's language that they use the M word, and I and it was interesting because I thought that it wouldn't be an issue when I was a kid. I thought, like, I remember even in kindergarten, like, I was the same height as a lot of kids, but I still looked different
Mm-hmm.
because of those distinctive features of having dwarfism. Does
Because
that make sense? Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, and just so the audience knows whether you're watching or listening, I have not had the opportunity to meet Samyukta in person yet. So I see her beautiful smile here on Zoom. And so I haven't gotten to meet her in person yet.
It'll
But I think
happen.
it will. And so that's why that's important for me to know. And also, I think for the world to know, the audience to know that people look different sometimes, but that doesn't mean they're not people. I think one of the other things, and you have dwarfism, and you're a very bold and outspoken advocate on that for people and that have that. I'm stuttering. I don't mean to like be mumbling around. I mean, you're a great advocate for you and other people who might have a variation of dwarfism. I think that what we need to keep in mind, whoever we're talking to, they're a person and just get to know them. Just because they look different doesn't mean that they're not a human being. It doesn't mean they don't have common interest with you. One of the things I see a lot, and this is not just my recent personal experience, but I used to see this all the time. I mean, I know people who have disabilities of all kinds. I know people have mobility issues, and people tend to just see the wheelchair or the cart. They don't see the person using it. And that's very frustrating to me. Even before I had my injury and got a short term disability, that used to frustrate the heck out of me because people would they either ignore people or they talk to them like they're a child and they don't understand anything. And it's like, look, they're just sitting down, they're not dumb. They probably are pretty smart. They could have a really great sense of humor too if you would just talk to them like a regular
Oh
person.
my God, that happens to me so many times. It's like whenever I'm in the store or just in a public place, like my sister would be there, so the cashier or whoever helping us would talk to her in a regular tone, and then I come behind her, the tone completely changes. The tone changes, the body language changes, and then it's it's annoying. It's so annoying, and also, oh my God, I have to tell you, just this last week, it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, or this happens like every so often whenever I go to a restaurant, like you could just pay attention for half a second to your surroundings or to the people that you're serving, you're helping. They they will ask, "Do you need a kids menu?" Or this
No, no.
they will ask, "Yeah, do you need a kids menu?" And I would be like, "No, I'm an adult." And they look and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And this last week, I went to the salon to get my nails done with my sister, and they're doing like the people who work there, they're doing their nails, so they would just like multitasking and say like, "Oh, hi, welcome, how are you?" And my sister was like, "Yeah," and we have an appointment, two pedicures with me, and my sister was checking in, and then the lady was like, "Oh, is it just for you? Is it for you and the kid?" And then I looked at her and she saw me and she's like, "Oh my God." She felt very sorry. Like I could tell from her like she was genuinely sorry, and she gave me a discount for the services. So which was nice. But my sister was like, "Oh my God, do you want to leave? Are you okay with me?" And I said,
Gosh.
"No, I'm fine." But like at least she corrected herself. At least she realized her mistake and was very like sorry about it. But some people, they're just like they don't realize like the gravity of that mistake. It's a microaggression.
Well,
So
it is. I agree with you on that. That is definitely because you're right. If they would just look up and see who's there for the appointment, they might
yeah,
realize, oh, wait a minute, this is a person who is an adult. They are not a child. And if somebody hears you speak, you're obviously an adult. It's like, come on.
yeah.
It's really wow. And goes across so many different things in society. You really describe very well like some of the challenges you have. We see these kind of challenges with a lot of different people with disabilities, but also, ageism, which to me is a macro aggression, not a micro one. Like, they think you're a certain age and you don't count
Yeah.
anymore. Whereas like my attitude is like older people, we actually have way more experience than you, so you should probably listen to us, and we could also use that old kid saying, well, we were here first, younger people. But
Hmm.
when you're in the world, and I know you go out on your own a lot. I mean, you're an adult, you live on your own, obviously, you have a job, you have your own place. So when you go out by yourself and you have a microaggression like that, or sometimes people are just rude, they're just plain rude. How do you handle it?
Well, just a tidbit I like to add for our audience. Like you said, I am independent. I have my own job, and I'm very independent and successful. I do have my own car. There is a misconception that little people is another term for people with dwarfism. People with dwarfism, little person. Some people actually don't mind being called dwarf, but I prefer like person first language.
Mhm.
So, for myself, I have a car. So there's a misconception that a lot of little people can't drive, but we drive. I have my own car. I have pedal extenders that latch on to the brake and the gas pedal. So that's how I'm able to get around. I feel so empowered, honestly. Like average size people may take certain things for granted, but there are things like daily things for granted, like washing my hands, brushing my teeth. That's what I need a stool for example. Um, but my car, I, that it's a sense of it's a sense of empowerment and independence for me. So that's why like I feel so attached to it sometimes, because just like knowing that it's there and knowing that I have it. And so yeah, I drive. But to answer your question, it really depends on the day. Like there are days when I feel like, okay, yeah, I'm in the mood to educate. I'll talk. I'll say something. But there are days where I'm like, I do not want to deal with people. I just have to get in and get out. So when there's a microaggression, depending on how serious it is, I will say something. Like if they use offensive language, or if they're talking directly to me, if it's a kid that's staring and, getting their mom or getting their attention of their guardian, who or the parent or the older person that's with them, if they're not talking directly to me, it's kind of like, oh, look at her. Oh, why is she like she's so small, or things like that. I just let it go. I'm just more curious to see how the parent responds. And it's more, and then I kind of, stay around for that to see. But I'm not obvious. I'm very subtle. So I just like I kind of just like want to know like how they react. And it's just okay, that this is an educational moment, or sometimes depend if it warrants me to say something, especially if the kid cannot stop staring. Usually when a kid stares at me, I say hello. Like, and it usually like throws them off. Or sometimes they say hi back, and then when it throws them off, they stop looking. But sometimes when they stop looking, they're like still peeking. And I see them. I'm not oblivious. I like sometimes I notice, sometimes I don't. But usually when it comes to kids, like I have like that's something I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. So that's a huge acceptance that I've had to come to terms with. Like just that is something that's not going to change. That is something that you develop a system for. You develop thick skin, I guess how people say it, thick
Mhm.
skin. But there are days where you can't handle it too. So you can't, like, it's okay if you have those days where it's like, oh, this is too much, because we're not robots. Like we're not expected to be on top of it every day.
Right. No, no, should you be? I mean, you should be able to just go through your day and do what you
Yeah.
need to do or want to do without having to feel like I got to educate everybody all the time.
Yeah.
I
That's
agree.
true.
Do you ever fight the urge to just be really sarcastic?
I'm not sarcastic. I'm the worst at sarcasm to this day. Like, I wish I could be like a like have I don't have a sarcastic bone in my body. I'm just so honest, and it like gets me sometimes, like how honest. It could bite you in the butt sometimes, of, like
Yeah.
how like honest and genuine like I am. If I try, then they'll know that I'm trying so hard. Especially like how it comes across. It's like, oh no, you had to think about it to like say it. So
Yeah. No, well, good for you though. That's a wonderful thing, not being sarcastic. I am somewhat sarcastic. I have a lot of self-control, but once in a while I can't stop myself. So it's like, so if you're with someone, okay, let's say you're with me and we're
yeah,
out, and
yeah.
I have a smart mouth. And I might say something to somebody, and somebody is being disrespectful to you. Would you want me to say something first, or would you want me to just look at you and see if you wanted to say something?
Good question. I think, well, I have a story for that too.
Okay.
That happened, if that's okay, sure. But like, I think I would say something first,
Mhm.
and I would like it depends on how just like the level of disrespect. If it's ignorance, I'll be like that's offensive, or be like, no, I'm an adult. Like, because that's what happened. Like, I was with my friends, and one of them was like, oh, I'll get you a kids menu. And I was like, no, I'm an adult. And so if I have it, if it's a quick response like that, then yeah, I can, I'll do it. But if it's still happening, if they're still being like stupid, then I would ask you like, okay, like, can you like, because then I get tired.
Yeah. Well, and I would expect that. Yeah, I would expect you to get tired after a while having to say something all the time. Oh my gosh, that would be exhausting. I
Like
mean,
there was, oh, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, the story that I wanted to share was we were in the Smoky Mountains, and we were just like, hiking on like one of the trails and stuff. And we were at the end, there's like a nice waterfall. So there's a lot of people there. And this kid, they were actually also Indian, like for context. And this kid would just not stop pointing. And the parents were just watching. The parents were just watching. And so I would say like, hey, like you have a question, do you like stop? She wouldn't stop pointing. So I said, hey, do you have a question? He's like, no. So I was like, okay, don't point. It's not polite to point. But he kept doing it, and the parents were just watching. The parents were not stepping in. And then my friend, she comes in, she's like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, they just wouldn't stop. And so she stepped in, and they were speaking in Malayalam, which is an Indian language. There's like over 50 languages in India. So she understood what the parents were saying. So she was able to communicate with them like, hey, don't please tell your kid not to point. That's not respectful. And the parents are actually sticking up for the child and be like, he's just a child. And my friend's like, no, that's not an excuse. He should not be pointing. It's not nice. So they were like, okay, fine, we'll tell him to stop. So
But it always starts at the top, right? Samyukta, it's always that. It's the parents. It's like in an association. If you have good leaders at the top, you have a pretty good team going. You got things happening. If you have bad leadership, you don't have good outcomes. It's bad parenting. Parents are setting a bad example, or
exactly.
they're not setting those guidelines for the child and using these as teaching moments. Because I can tell you, if I did something like that when I was a kid, my parents would have definitely straightened me out. They would have said, "Stop that. That's not polite. Apologize."
Apologize. They would like seriously like I get punished.
Yeah,
I'd be in
definitely.
serious trouble if I treated someone like that.
Well, I have to say, I was something of a naughty child, so I spent a lot of time
Oh,
on the punishment chair.
oh.
It's probably why I'm so well behaved today. So, but no, I got to tell you, if I were out with you and somebody made a rude remark to you, uh, I might not, I might react so quickly you wouldn't be able to stop me. Like I might just be like, "Hey, Nimrod,
And
now
I
you,
welcome that. Even
you know."
if we're talking at the same time, if we both respond at the same time, I totally welcome it. No, you don't have to be a bystander. You don't have to like I was like there were like I would love it if someone was it doesn't have to be me first and then moves to the second person in line, I guess second in command. I would love it if it was all together. Like, hey, yeah, listen to her. Or like, hey, yeah, that's just like reinforcing what I'm saying. So yeah, I'd totally welcome it.
Oh, great. Okay, that's good to know because I do that. I am one of those people if I'm just out and about and I
Mm-hmm.
see somebody getting picked on or behavior I don't think is right, I say something. I know
We
a lot of
need that.
well, I don't know. I don't know. Are you comfortable speaking up for other people? I know you speak up for yourself, but would you, because I'm just going to say it, you're a smaller person. And so you might be at risk of getting hurt or getting injured. So do you feel comfortable speaking up for other people?
Here's what I do.
Okay.
Like because of my size, because of that risk, because of that physical risk,
Mhm.
I'm not usually the one to kind of get in between like a situation or just kind of like stand there and be like, hey, this is not right. I usually like will ask someone like, hey, are you able to step in? Do you see that this is what's happening? And it really depends on the situation. If it's a kid or if it's a harmless situation, then I'll say it. Like usually I stick up for my family so much. I have a sister who has severe peanut allergies.
Mhm.
So depending on, her mindset, depending on the time and space, I'm there, advocating like, hey, is this peanut allergy? Sometimes I speak up for her first. And even though she's like right there, I'm very like, yes, you got to know this. Let's do this. So I think family wise, it's easier for me. But it's the truth when people say it's easier to advocate for others than to advocate for yourself. I see it. So to me, it works it really depends. Like, especially in situations like in outside external circumstances where like you don't want to like you want to protect yourself as well. So I usually like have to get somebody else to address it.
Well, and I think that's smart too. I've been told by more than one person I probably should like not say stuff sometimes when I do.
Really?
Yeah, well, because I'm a average size. I'm very average sized. I'm actually average height, 5'5" for a woman. I'm not a very big person, but I have a big attitude, and that can be a problem because
Aw.
in the middle of things. But I do, and I really want to emphasize what you just said about you might not feel comfortable intervening personally, but you go and ask someone else to help. Like, could you come? And I've done that myself in situations because sometimes you just need backup, right? And
Yeah.
we should all back each other up, and there's no reason not to back each other up. So so it's Dwarfism Awareness Month, and that's one of the things we really want to remind people about. So when people meet a little person, I actually prefer that term too. I know
Hmm.
dwarfism is a medical term, but I really do like the term little person better. I really just like person better.
Just the person highlights the
As a
person.
person,
Hmm.
yeah, just like as a person who happens to be smaller than
Hmm.
other people, that's all. So when people meet a person who has dwarfism, and maybe they haven't met someone with that condition before, or maybe just very rarely. Uh, what are some things that they can say? Like maybe hello, like how should they interact? I guess like they might feel uncomfortable looking down. Should they sit in a chair to talk to somebody? What are some
Yeah.
things they could do, or like what are some questions they might be able to ask about needs for accommodation?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think just treat us as regular human beings first to say hello. I think, it just like it just depends on the space. So if this is like a networking event or if this is like a meetings, like someone is providing accommodations or putting together a meeting, I think as far as like the physical like interacting with someone, you could always ask them, "Hey, would you like me to bend down, or are you okay me standing?" Because it's really about the preference. I am okay. Like if someone kneels down, some people really hate it when another person kneels down because some people tend to take it as it's patronizing, like you're talking to a child. But and for me, I know the intention behind it. You could tell if someone's really like really intentional that really wants to talk to you versus someone just being extra, like really like hovering, So then I tell them like, oh, okay, it's okay. You could stand or pull up a chair. I actually like when they pull up a chair without me asking. So it just like makes it so much easier. So in terms of accommodations, like what I usually ask for is a step stool. So there's this term that I recently learned on another podcast called body equity. And like we were talking about with the wheelchair, people looking at the wheelchairs, people don't realize that wheelchairs are an example of body equity. Stools, a step stool for me is body equity because I can't function without it. I can't, I'm, it's the source of my independence. Like it's integral to my daily life activities. So it sounds so simple and it sounds so like silly, but I need it, especially in hotel, like going traveling in my workplace, in my home environment. So that is a lot of what little people request. Step stools are very integral. Some of them use scooters, so because depending on their body and what their mobility capabilities, mobility issues are very rampant among people with dwarfism. So you'll see a lot of us use wheelchairs, use scooters to get around. So accessibility is definitely key in the dwarfism community. So it's not like step stools may not be enough, right? Like things, ramps, elevators, parking spots, like those are important accommodations. Things also lowered too. It like even having a step stool, it can only help us, reach so much, right? So whenever I go around, whenever I travel, I always ask, like especially in meetings, if they could do it, have things lowered on just regular height tables because I could reach, the buffet line. Sometimes those buffet items are really high. And I know there's always going to be people there like, oh, can I get you something? Like, do you need something? And sure, I'll take the help, but if that's an option, why not ask for it? So, yeah.
Yeah, not everybody's the same height anyway. I mean, even if you're looking at average height people, I'm 5'5", my husband's 5'11". So
Oh,
he'll put things up where I can't reach them without a
yeah.
step stool. Like I need a step stool to
You need a
get it.
step stool.
So, we have to keep in mind everybody's not the same, right? And it's like we all need some things. It's so interesting you brought up like the buffet line at meetings because that was a challenge that I had when I went to ASAE annual back in August
Yeah,
and trying to go through the buffet line. And I had a manual wheelchair and I chose that because I didn't want to have to worry about charging it up.
sure.
Where where would I charge it? And it would be heavy, like I couldn't pick it up or somebody else couldn't pick it up. But if it weren't for Wendy Toyama, wouldn't have gotten lunch one day because Wendy and I had lunch together in the exhibit hall and she carried all the food for both of us. And then we found a place to eat. But you're absolutely right. You can't reach it. And even if you could reach it, where are you going to put it? Right. Because there's no trays. And all the tables, this was so strange to me. All the tables by the food were those bar tables, the really tall ones that you stand at. And all the regular size tables with chairs that you could sit down at were all like on the other side of the exhibit hall, nowhere near the food. And it's like, who is thinking this stuff through? What is going on?
I I
So
noticed that. Yeah, it was frustrating too. I think the reason I know you probably know this, like the reason that they did that was so we could, get with the exhibitors, but it's just so frustrating to I was so hungry. I didn't eat much. Like
yeah,
just to find food, just to like get in line, just to find a place to sit and the quality of the food, that's a whole other story. But like
yeah,
it I set feedback. I
yeah,
set feedback regarding that, just navigating that. Yeah, like
yeah.
it has to be better.
It really does. And I sent the same feedback.
Mhm.
They just cannot get the lunch in the exhibit hall right. They've been doing that for years. They just can't figure it out. And I don't know why, because all the
Mhm.
rest of the meeting goes smoothly and it goes well.
Yeah.
The exhibit hall is usually really nice. Like I really enjoyed the exhibit hall this year. Of course, that's where I spent most of my time because I was in a wheelchair and it took so long to get from place
Get
to
it right.
place
You know,
that I was like, well, I just can't get to a lot of sessions,
Mhm.
because there wasn't always somebody to
It's
help
so
me.
spread out.
Yeah, and it was very spread out. And if you're in a wheelchair and they have really thick carpeting in the exhibit hall, that's like slogging through mud. So I sent in some of those too. And I actually got to participate in one of the ASAE listening sessions about accessibility.
You
And
did?
yeah, and I shared my lived experience of being a person because I was thinking, this convention center in Cleveland, it was nice, but it was not made for people who couldn't walk. You had to take two elevators to get anywhere. If you're in a wheelchair, it was all escalator driven. And they had no escalators that a wheelchair could ride down. So I know they
Ah,
exist because I've seen shopping cart escalators at the grocery store.
that's right. There are
Why don't they
shopping
have
carts.
wheelchair escalators? It's like,
Yeah.
there
And
you
just
go.
to and just to get to an elevator, you have to travel really far.
Yes,
They're not,
I skipped
yeah.
a lot of things, in the evening
That's
because
fair.
it's too hard. And they had a wonderful man who had the accessibility van. And if I had not been connected with that man, I would not have been able to get anywhere because the shuttle buses were not, they had like 6 or 7 steps. It's like
Mm,
even though they knelt, it didn't matter because I couldn't walk that many steps at that point. I'm recovering, but it's slow. But there are just so many aspects of it that I think a thoughtful person, whether you're disabled or not, a thoughtful, considerate person could walk into a room and say, okay, well, we're putting the food here for people who can stand up, but what about the people who can't stand up? So maybe we need 2 tiers of buffet, or maybe we need a tall person buffet line and a short person buffet line. Because I know I might like the short person buffet line anyway, because I'm not that tall. You know what I mean? It's like thinking through like people are different sizes, they have different needs. I wrote a blog post recently suggesting a conference accessibility lounge as a starting point for conversation about this so people can get more involved in the conferences because I really paid attention when I went to ASA annual because I was in a wheelchair. So I really paid attention. How many other
yeah.
people did I see? I really didn't see that many. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't there. It just means I didn't see them. But I saw, I think, 4 people other than myself. So we were few and far between. And I think that if we started with a conversation about something like an accessibility lounge and what could be in that lounge to help people and make them feel comfortable and be in a space that's for them, it's
Hmm.
not for everybody else, it's for them. But also, you could expand that idea. And I'd love to get your input on this. You could expand that idea instead of just one lounge in one location, because you still have to get there, right? It could still be difficult. What if we had like accessibility stations all throughout the conference? Because people with carts and power chairs, they need a place to charge up.
Charge.
They
Exactly.
need to charge up their phones in a place where they can reach the charging thing, right? So those were some other ideas I had after I wrote that blog post. Is like, why couldn't we put these places all around? So, like and you've mentioned needing stools several times because of your height. When and I'm sure you noticed this, I noticed in the restrooms at the convention center there were no stools.
Actually, they had it in specific places, so I was able to
Okay.
find the stools, which is really nice. Yeah, they're not in all of the restrooms, but they
Oh,
were
good.
in some of them, which was really good. So I thought like on that point, like they were able to help me specifically, which was like really great. And yeah, I want to be able to, and eventually we'll be able to say the same for others. So
Yeah, I would love to see that. So, but I would like to get your opinion. Would you like to have places throughout the convention center that were designed for people who need, different way to access things?
I'd like it. I think that would be awesome.
So, and maybe, because the reason I suggested accessibility lounge is because that's something we're familiar with at
Hmm.
meetings, right? Because we have like an ASA Business Connection Lounge, and they even have a Tranquility Lounge,
Hmm.
things like that. So that's where the starting point was. But having this conversation with you now, talking it through, it's like, well, maybe they need to be spread throughout the place, throughout the exhibit hall, throughout the convention center, and make those places more easily accessible for people who might need them. So
Agreed. And maybe the food could be there too,
yes.
because yeah, the food should be there because that way you don't have to go through the hassle of getting at the exhibit hall. You can just go to one of those stations and just get the food.
That's a really great idea. And then it's
Hmm.
fully accessible.
Yeah,
You wouldn't need to ask for help, and you wouldn't have to hope somebody offered to help.
yeah. You just know it's there. I think that's it's like a safe space, like a
Yeah.
space where you know that you'll be comfortable, that you'll get what you need. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those would be great. And then, well, how would you feel? Another thing, because we use ambassadors a lot in the association world, member
Hmm.
ambassadors, greeting.
Yeah.
I think an accessibility ambassador would be a nice idea too, where people could volunteer to, show people where these things are. Obviously, you know what you need, and you're a fully functioning grown person, adult. So you know what you need and when you need it, but maybe
Yeah.
you know where it is, or maybe you need help finding it. So I think accessibility ambassador could be a person who's like, oh yeah, well I can tell you where that is. You can find one right around the corner here, or maybe if somebody's in a manual wheelchair and they're getting tired and they need help, because boy, a lot of people help me with that.
Yeah, I bet.
And you could be a volunteer to like, okay, well I can help you get over to that session you want to get to, help you find the room and also help you get there, things like that. But the thing about the charging station really sticks with me. And you're probably like,
Mm.
Celia, why do you keep obsessing about the charging station?
No, a lot of people like who use like electric wheelchairs, that would be huge for them.
Yeah. I think, in a comfortable space. And I saw at the Cleveland meeting back in August, a woman who was using a cart and she had to charge her cart up. And she was just sitting out in the hallway with her cart plugged in to charge it up. And I
Hmm.
was thinking, you know, uh, I'm glad she found an outlet, but this isn't really very welcoming or comfortable because you're just out in the hallway and people are walking by. And I just kept thinking there has to be a better way.
Yeah, I agree. I've always like in my whenever I talk about accessibility in meetings, like I always say there should be some kind of point person. And I like how you say accessibility ambassador, double A kind of thing. That way, someone's there reachable. Like that's their designated role. Like for anything accessibility, that way, there's an issue. If you need help getting somewhere, they will be there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think yes, and we could have ribbons. So even if we're just walking down the hallway and you had a question, you could just stop us and say, "Hey, I have a question."
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that I noticed, and then I'm sorry, we're going to have to wrap our episode up.
Go ahead. I know.
But it's been I just love talking to you. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
But oh, gee, and now I forgot my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to ask you. But I just really think that we need to just be able to talk to each other and ask each other questions and just say, you know, what can I help you with? What do you need? Don't offer, just ask. I mean, I always ask.
Just ask. Don't assume.
Yeah, exactly. Don't assume. Anyway, well, probably after we're finished recording this episode, I'll remember, I'm sure, the insightful comment I
Put
was
it
going to
in.
make.
Put it in the
But no, this
comments or
is a
something.
wonderful wonderful conversation.
Agreed.
Uh, with you. I love talking with you about these issues. Uh, and you've been on the show before, Samyukta. I like to ask my guests, what's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more about, how can I be more of an ambassador for people, or an advocate?
Yeah, so you can check me out on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile at Samyu Nira, SAMYUNEERA. I'm also on Instagram, the same Instagram handle. The one takeaway, I think, just to put in a plug for Dwarfism Awareness Month, is that we are all people. Like we deserve to be treated with the same respect and integrity as everyone else. And we are not a novel. We're not novelty. We're not someone to be objectified, picked up, or even fetishized. And that is definitely some. And I really hope that you see us for the people and contributing citizens that we are.
Thank you, Samyukta. That's a great closing thought.
Thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
Yeah, I really love it. You're definitely coming back. So we'll find a
Yay! Part 3. Stay tuned.
oh, this is great. And I really do think we all just need to keep talking about it.
Have these conversations.
Yes. So, and I did just remember very quickly, I just did remember
Yes.
the point I wanted to make very quickly. A lot of people who had had a short-term disability previously, I met at the annual meeting in August, shared their story with me. And so I think we need to remember, it's sometimes people have had a past experience that could be informative
Yeah.
for others. So that was the thought that I had almost forgotten. So I'm glad I remembered it. So
Oh yeah. I'm glad they talked to you.
so great having you, but we have to go rogue for now. But we'll be back next time with another interesting and exciting episode. So again, gentle reminder, don't forget to follow us or subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box and see the world differently, check out our website, roguetulips.com. If you're looking for CAE education or ethics education, check out our education page. We are still accepting registrations for our CAE Redux course if you would like to take that. There's information on the website. So that's it for this week. On behalf of Samyukta and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.